What if Predator was never just a movie? What if the 1987 film wasn't created from pure imagination, but from reports the public was never supposed to see? Because according to one of the darkest theories surrounding the franchise, the story of Predator didn't begin in Hollywood. It began in the jungle. Years before Arnold Schwarzenegger faced an invisible hunter on screen, soldiers were already finding bodies hanging from trees, skinned, drained of blood, their weapons untouched, their faces frozen in the kind of fear no enemy soldier could create. And when military investigators tried to explain what happened, the official story always changed. Sometimes it was blamed on enemy forces, sometimes on local guerrillas, sometimes on animals. Sometimes the files simply disappeared, but the details kept repeating. Remote jungle, elite soldiers, no signs of battle, bodies displayed like trophies, strange lights in the trees, heat distortions in the air, witnesses who vanished after talking. So tonight, we're not looking at Predator as a movie. We're looking at the terrifying true story people claim was hidden behind it. And if even part of this theory is true, then Hollywood didn't create the Predator. Hollywood gave it a name. The story begins in 1968. Deep in the jungles of Vietnam, during one of the most chaotic periods of the war, a special forces unit was sent on what should have been a routine extraction mission. According to the files described in this theory, the unit was led by Captain Richard Hollister, a decorated soldier with years of combat experience. These were not nervous rookies walking into the jungle for the first time. These were trained men, elite men. Soldiers who understood ambushes, traps, guerrilla warfare, and the fear of fighting an enemy that could disappear into the trees. But 3 days after they went missing, search teams found something that didn't match any battlefield report. 7 soldiers were discovered hanging from trees. Their bodies had been skinned. Their weapons were still nearby. Nothing had been stolen. There were no signs of enemy movement in the area, no shell casings, no footprints, no campfire smoke, no evidence of a firefight. The official explanation blamed Viet Cong guerrillas, but the details didn't fit. The cuts were too clean, too precise, too controlled. A field surgeon who examined the bodies allegedly wrote something that would become one of the first clues in the entire forest hunter mystery. No human tool could have made those incisions. That one line changed everything, because this wasn't just violence. This looked surgical. The bodies had also been drained of blood, but investigators couldn't find where the blood had gone. There were no pools beneath the bodies, no drag marks, no containers, nothing that explained how 7 grown men could be emptied so completely in the middle of the jungle. 2 weeks later, a second team was sent into the same area. 3 men, reconnaissance only. They never came back. Searchers found one thing: a single dog tag belonging to Private James Elkins. The metal was partially melted. Not burned, not blasted, melted. And according to the story, metallurgists who studied the tag couldn't match the damage to any known weapon. That was when the case stopped being treated like a normal wartime disappearance. This was no longer just a battlefield mystery. This was the first sign of a pattern that would follow soldiers across the world for decades. The source script you provided already has this raw material. Vietnam, 1968, the skinned soldiers, the blood loss, the melted dog tag, and the "no human tool" line. I'm keeping that core because it is the strongest opening incident.
If Vietnam had been the only case, maybe the government could have buried it forever. War creates chaos. Chaos creates confusion, and confusion creates room for lies. But then it happened again. In 1972, a similar event was reported in Cambodia. 5 soldiers separated from their unit. When they were found, the scene matched the earlier Vietnam incident almost perfectly. Bodies hanging in a clearing, skin removed, skulls and spinal columns taken, weapons left behind. No enemy forces nearby. And then came the witness report. A local villager claimed he saw lights moving through the trees the night before. Not normal lights. He described them as angry fireflies, small burning points moving too fast through the jungle canopy. Then he said he saw something else. A shadow that bent the trees. Not broke them, bent them, as if something heavy was moving above the ground, but not touching it like a normal animal. Something passing through the canopy with strength, speed, and control. 3 days after giving his statement, the man disappeared. By 1975, according to the theory, the Pentagon had compiled a classified dossier under the name Forest Hunter. The name alone tells you what they believed they were dealing with. Not a ghost, not an animal, not a myth, a hunter. The dossier allegedly collected 13 similar incidents across Southeast Asia. Different countries, different units, different years. But the same pattern kept appearing. Elite soldiers go into remote jungle. The unit loses communication. Search teams arrive days later. Bodies are found displayed in trees. The strongest members are missing skulls or spinal columns. Witnesses report strange lights, heat distortions, or something moving above them. And almost every person who gave too detailed of a statement either died, vanished, or withdrew everything they said. That is what makes this theory disturbing. Not just the violence, the repetition. Because once something happens once, you can call it an accident. When it happens twice, you call it a coincidence. But when it happens 13 times, someone starts keeping files. 5:15 to 7. For years, the reports stayed inside military channels. That changed when someone outside the battlefield looked at the evidence. Her name, according to the story, was Dr. Eleanor Franks. She was a forensic anthropologist brought in to examine photographic evidence from several of the incidents. And unlike military officers, her job was not to protect a chain of command. Her job was to study bodies. Bone damage, cut patterns, tissue removal, tool marks, cause of death. And what she allegedly found made the situation impossible to explain. The injuries were not random. They were deliberate. The bodies were not simply mutilated. They were processed. The skinning was controlled. The spinal removals were clean. The skulls appeared to be taken as trophies. Her conclusion was simple and horrifying. These were not human kills. She believed the pattern suggested trophy collection. That means whoever did this was not killing out of panic, not survival, not hunger. It was hunting. And worse than that, it was keeping souvenirs. 3 days after submitting her report, Dr. Franks was killed in what officials called a home invasion. But nothing valuable was stolen. Not jewelry, not money, not electronics. The only thing disturbed was her work. Files missing, photos gone, research removed. That is where this story stops feeling like a military mystery and starts feeling like a cover-up. Because when a scientist says the evidence is impossible, and then the evidence disappears with her, people are going to ask a simple question. Who wanted her quiet? And what did she see in those photos that nobody else was supposed to understand?
Then came Guatemala. This is one of the most important chapters in the entire theory because it looks disturbingly close to what audiences would later see in the 1987 film. A CIA-backed Guatemalan Special Forces unit disappeared during an operation in the northern jungle. 2 weeks later, a farmer discovered the remains. 8 men, skinned, hanging from ancient trees. Some still had weapons in their hands, but the weapons had not been fired. That detail matters, because soldiers don't walk into death holding loaded weapons unless they never got a chance to use them. The farmer told authorities he had seen something the night before. He called it a demon made of glass. That description is chilling because 5 years later, movie audiences would watch an invisible creature moving through the jungle, bending light around its body like glass. The farmer didn't describe a monster with clear skin. He didn't describe a ghost. He described a distortion, a shape that was there and not there at the same time. A body made of moving air. Guatemalan authorities dismissed it as superstition. Then the farmer and his family disappeared. The CIA officer assigned to investigate was named Thomas Schaefer. According to the story, Schaefer found strange tracks near the killing site. 3-toed impressions, over 20 inches long. The tracks appeared suddenly, then vanished, as if whatever made them had dropped from the trees, walked briefly, then lifted back into the canopy. But Schaefer noticed something even worse. The jungle was silent. No birds, no insects, no monkeys, no movement. Nothing living within a half-mile of the site. Anyone who has spent time in a jungle knows silence is not normal. The jungle is never truly quiet, unless everything inside it is hiding. Schaefer requested permission to continue investigating. Instead, he was recalled. 3 months later, he retired early and moved to a remote cabin in Alaska. By 1984, he was dead. Officially, it was ruled a suicide. But his journal allegedly contained hundreds of pages about something he called the Hunter. He wrote about being watched through his windows. He wrote about heat. He wrote about red lights. And he wrote one sentence that explains why he moved to Alaska. It doesn't like the cold. 5 years before Predator showed an alien hunter using heat vision in the jungle, the Schaefer case had already described a glass-like figure, trophy kills, strange tracks, jungle silence, and a man hiding in the cold because he believed something was watching him. That is why Guatemala matters. It is the bridge between the hidden reports and the movie. By 1985, the pattern had become too large to ignore. The alleged forest hunter files had incidents across multiple countries. Witnesses had disappeared, military personnel were dead, and foreign governments were starting to ask questions. Then came the case that, according to this theory, finally forced the truth into Hollywood. A helicopter carrying a Dutch Special Forces team crashed in the remote jungle near the border of Suriname and Brazil. When search teams reached the site 3 days later, they expected to find wreckage. Instead, they found a scene that matched the old files. 4 bodies hanging from trees, skinned. 3 soldiers missing entirely. The helicopter itself was mostly intact. No clear mechanical failure. No conventional weapons fire. No explanation that made sense. This time, the incident could not be quietly buried. The Dutch government wanted answers.
So the United States sent an investigation team. The man leading the team was Major Alan Schaefer. No relation to Thomas Schaefer, according to the record. But the name is hard to ignore. With him was CIA liaison George Dillon. Their public mission was simple: determine if Soviet-backed insurgents were operating in the area. Their real mission, according to documents later found in Dillon's personal safe, was much stranger. Confirm or deny forest hunter activity. Neither man returned. The 7-man team sent after them disappeared too. Now the government had a problem. Too many soldiers were gone. Too many officials knew. Too many foreign agencies were involved. The story could not be admitted publicly. But it also could not stay hidden forever. So, according to the theory, they chose a third option. They would tell the public the truth, but disguise it as fiction. In September 1985, director John McTiernan was connected to a script called Hunter. That script would eventually become Predator. Producer Joel Silver claimed it came through normal Hollywood channels, credited to Jim and John Thomas. But the theory says the project moved too fast.
Locations were secured quickly. Military hardware appeared with minimal resistance. Technical advisors were unusually involved. And some scenes were allegedly storyboarded before the director even came fully on board. The most suspicious scenes? The skinned bodies hanging from trees. Production assistants later claimed military advisors were extremely specific about how those bodies should look, how they should hang, where the cuts should be, how the bodies should be displayed. Not like filmmakers inventing a scary scene, like people recreating one. And then there is the Arnold Schwarzenegger story. According to the script you gave me, Schwarzenegger allegedly recalled in an obscure interview that military advisors were everywhere during production, constantly giving specific details. One advisor supposedly got drunk and told him, "This isn't a movie, it's a warning." Whether that quote is real or part of the legend almost doesn't matter for the story, because as a piece of horror mythology, it does exactly what it needs to do. It makes the viewer ask, what if the movie was not made to entertain us? What if it was made to prepare us? When Predator was released in 1987, audiences saw a brilliant action movie, a jungle mission, a team of commandos, an invisible alien, Arnold covered in mud, fighting for survival. But according to the forest hunter theory, people inside the military saw something different. They saw classified details hidden in plain sight. The first detail was heat vision. In the movie, the Predator does not see the world the way humans do. It sees heat. That sounds like a cool science fiction concept, but in the alleged files, witnesses had already described unusual heat signatures around several incidents. Survivors claimed the creature seemed to track body warmth. Others reported strange thermal distortions in the air before attacks. The second detail was cloaking. The Predator doesn't simply hide, it bends light. It becomes a moving distortion. And that matches the Guatemala farmer's description of a demon made of glass. Not invisible, glass. The third detail was treetop movement. In the movie, the Predator hunts from above. It moves through the canopy, watching soldiers from a place they rarely think to look. That matches the reports of bodies found hanging from trees, tracks that appear and disappear, and witnesses describing something moving above them. The fourth detail was trophy collection. The Predator removes skulls and spines. That is not a random monster choice. That is culture. That is ritual. That is the behavior Dr. Franks allegedly identified years earlier when she said the killings looked like hunting trophies.
The fifth detail was the skinned bodies. This is maybe the most disturbing detail because it appears over and over in the alleged incidents before the movie was released. Vietnam, Cambodia, Guatemala, Suriname. Bodies displayed in trees, like warnings. And then there is the sixth detail.
The predator does not hunt the weak, it hunts what it respects. Armed soldiers, warriors, killers, survivors, people dangerous enough to make the game interesting. That is the sick logic behind the entire legend. We are not being hunted because we are helpless. We are being hunted because we finally became dangerous. 1930 to 2000, final warning. So was Predator just a movie? Or was it the safest way to tell the public what soldiers had already found in the jungle? Maybe the creature was never invented. Maybe it was translated from classified files, from missing units, from bodies in trees, from witnesses who saw glass moving through the leaves. And if that is true, then the scariest part of Predator is not the alien. It is the possibility that the monster was already here. Hollywood just gave it a mask. So the next time you watch those 3 red dots appear on screen, ask yourself one question. Did someone create that image to scare us? Or did someone see it first? Comment, just another movie, if you think this was all fiction. Comment, Forest Hunter, if you think something was being hidden.